Welcome to Grey County Life at Home. It is a glorious, sunny, warm day. Apparently the last day of the current heat spell that we've been under, which I have been taking great advantage of. I don't know about everybody else out there. Mary Jane, have you been postponing the lugging of rocks at the property in this heat wave? I hope so.
Yes, we've been staying cool and staying hydrated and monitoring our outdoor activities. So I'm up really early in the morning. I get my weeding and my rocks and hauling logs done before 9:30 in the morning, and then we water the plants. We have about 13 gardens, and we water the plants late in the evening.
That sounds like a lovely schedule to have. I have to say, yeah, I'm trying to do the same, and went for my first bike ride of the season last night with Carolyn, and I realized that I do have to do a bit of a tune-up on this bicycle of mine because the seat is a little wobbly, which made for a little bit of a challenging ride, but it was really, really nice out, and I forgot how much I enjoyed it. And I was telling Carolyn, when we go downhill skiing, in my head, I'm thinking the whole time down the hill, I'm so happy. I love this. This is so much fun. This is my happy place. And I get the same feeling on a bicycle. So I thought I am going to make a point of getting out on my bike more often, keep that mental health in a nice, happy place, which is very important, even if we are kind of lightening up with our restrictions. Yeah, looking forward to some dinners out on patios at the local restaurants and that sort of thing, and seeing friends and family that we've been, doing the video thing with, which is awesome, but not quite the same, as we all know that, but that's okay. And I know June is a ridiculously busy and full month, Mary Jane. What are some of the things that we were talking about there just before we came on air?
Well, first I'd like to start off with actually a bit of a heavy heart, because we need to stand in peace and solidarity with our Muslim neighbors. We are shocked by this tragic event that happened in London, Ontario, where 4 family members, Muslim family members, were killed, and 1 child remains in hospital. This is heart-wrenching to have this kind of situation happen, because there is no place in our communities or in our country for hatred and violence. And so I started off the day with a heavy heart, and our heart as a community, our hearts are with this family and the extended Muslim community. So I know Rhonda started off on a very cheery note, but I really wanted to address this issue, because even within our own community here, we are having vigils and honoring the Muslim community we have here in Grey and Bruce counties. And that is really heartfelt, because in our communities, we embrace diversity and inclusion, and we see that as a very important part of our community, honoring neighbor, helping neighbors. But just a couple of notes reflecting back to what Rhonda said about June being a busy month. June is also Pride Month, and there will be some virtual activities going on, as well as there may be some small group gatherings as well. So please check out and participate in everything that's happening with Pride Month. And June is Indigenous History Month. And when we dedicate a month to learn, to honor, and to acknowledge our respect for inclusion and diversity, we not only enrich ourselves, but we enrich our communities as well. So let's take this time in June to really focus on all the ways in which we can support our community members with inclusion and respect. June is also signals. I know so many children who are in school think, June, we're on our way to summer. That's so exciting. But this has been a really challenging year and a half because children have spent more time at home than they have at school. And we are frustrated, even disappointed to know that the schools will not be reopening until September. So, and this affects the mental health of the whole family. So we're on a little bit of a downer knowing that children can't go back to school right away, even if it was just for a few weeks. And so our guest today is Dr. Stephanie Hancock, and she is a mental health and trauma care expert and author. And she has put together 5 tips to help your child be mentally healthy and occupied this summer. And these are strategies to help families navigate the summer months. So welcome, Dr. Stephanie Hancock, and thank you so much for getting up early and joining us today on Grey County Life at Home, because this is such an important issue.
Thank you so much for having me, Mary and Rhonda. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
So help us with your 5 tips. Tell us more about them.
Wow. Let me just quickly segue into, I really empathize with your community for what you guys are going through, because we know in the U.S. we're equally going through a whole lot like that. So I do empathize, and I pray that a lot of the kids too will, because many people might be going through trauma as a result of this. So your show today is more, it's just, I mean, it just fits right in, because some children will have heard about this incident and parents would have heard about it. So this is a nice segue into helping parents out there to be able to help their kids during the summer. So when we talk about tips, all of our kids have been through a lot. You've talked about a year and a half of being cooped up in the house. Many are still cooped up in the house right now. We are beginning to open up a little bit. And so one of the tip, number 1, is getaway. I know that when we hear getaway, it's like, okay, where? We've been in the house for all these years. Where? From the kitchen to the bedroom or what? But you know what? There's, when you are resourceful, there's a way that you can maneuver your way around getting away. So I know the usual ones that we are used to is going on vacation, getting on the plane and going on vacation. But there are things that you could do. The whole idea is to have family time together. It could be just taking them out for a walk. It could be going to visit a bookstore. It could be whatever it is, as long as it's not in the home. You could take a day trip to a place and then come back home. So that's number 1.
I like the idea that helping children find a purpose in their day, because they may not be doing online learning the same way. So how do they find a purpose?
Wow, that's such a great idea. Now, okay, so depending on the age group, right, I have, in my clinic, I have from like 4-year-old all the way to 99-year-old, right? And so I have my teenagers that tell me, oh, I'm bored, there's nothing to do at home. Well, here's the thing. Some of them can take a summer job. It could be part-time, maybe 10 hours, few hours. First, finding out what they love. Some of them love to cook. Then they go to a restaurant and just, donate some times there, or even work to earn some money there. If you're talking about kids that are not teenagers, you could take them out to, for example, a bookstore, and then have them play around in the bookstore, have them pick a toy that they love and a book that they might love, a book that talks about a topic that they might love. So it's important that you also give them chores in the house so that they're not just sitting down and just waiting for mommy and daddy to do everything, but that you can get them and say, hey, you know what, you're part of this family too. All right, now let's put a list of some chores that can get you busy, because a lot of our kids right now are dealing with racing thoughts. And how many of you know, even as an adult, if you stay by yourself for too long, your mind is going to be racing. Hey, so now imagine kids, you leave them by themselves. Oh, it's going to be ongoing. So it's important that we do put some responsibility in it too, so that you're teaching them responsibility. At the same time, you're also helping them to understand that because we have a pandemic doesn't mean that life stops there. It just means that, well, we have to segue into doing other stuff. After all, the kids of today are those that are going to be the ones leading the country tomorrow.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's so important, having that sense of purpose in each day. That's not just for our kids, that's for us as well. And tying that into, the family time. I know when we go for a walk, we pick up garbage along the walk.
That's right.
And, sense of purpose, of community and spending time together, but also setting that example of, we all have a purpose in our community to take care of each other. And I like that sort of thing of the sense of purpose doesn't have to be just within the house.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So when you talk about incorporating education into it, right? One of some of the kids that I see in my clinic have ADHD. All right. So their parents are already like, oh my God, how are we going to do this? When they had somewhere to go, at least we could breathe for a few hours. And now they're going to be home all day doing absolutely nothing. How do we make this work? Now, we're going to figure out what our kids love to do the most. If your kid loves a certain subject, well, here is an opportunity for you to take a walk, and you guys can go visit the library. Have him or her pick something of value to that person. If it's a topic, if they like cars, they can pick up a storybook that talks about making up cards, creating cards and things like that, and engage them in education. Use this too as an opportunity to also educate your children. It's just not about just the pandemic, because if we leave them to their own demise, they're going to be in front of news, hearing all the bad news, all the bad stories. Many of them are already dealing with post-traumatic stress syndrome. Some of them are dealing with acute, which is right now, they are so stressed out just watching their parents stressed out. And so it's important that we incorporate education, something new. Always try to figure out what can we do that is a little bit different today. Cooking, some of them love to cook. I know my babies, when they were younger, they love to cook. One would even climb a chair and try to cook or something for the whole family. So find something that they love to do. If it's cooking, if it's making cars, whatever it is, engage them in that.
One of the things, I've had a very eclectic career path, and my career path has always been the health and well-being of families and children. And one of the things I used to recommend to parents is that just to cozy up and read a story to your child. It's not making the child read the story. It's building that love of literature and storytelling, but it's also the warmth of the body, just being cuddled and cozied up and hearing the language and the flow of the language.
Oh my God, I so love the fact that you talked about storytelling, because part of my life, my second life anyway, is storytelling. And then even in my clinic, I use something called rehabilitative storytelling, where I actually help the kid to tell their own story to their parent. And so it's important when there are times the kids do not, depending on their age, they don't really have the right words or whatever, or they just want their mind to be quiet. And just spending that time, putting them next to you, and you reading that story to them makes a lot of difference. A lot of times with ADHD children, you want them to read the story. Before they get to the next line, down to something else. And so now at the parent, you're trying to see, okay, who's running the house? Is he or she running it, or am I running it, or is she running me with the house? So when you keep them next to you and you share that, just like you talked about, Mary Jane, you're sharing an intimate moment with your child, and you're giving them the permission so that when they do go back to school, or if they hear anything that is very disturbing, they know they can come to you. When you do not spend that time with that kid, do you know what I hear from a lot of my teenagers? They stay locked up in their room. They tell me, in fact, one told me, my mother is the blabbermouth. And I said, what do you mean by that? And and the mother is saying, well, he doesn't talk to me. And I said, what do you mean your mother is the blabbermouth? So, well, because if I tried her with one thing, and it didn't take 5 minutes, the whole family knew and heard about it. My grandmother said, calling about it. My great-grandmother in another country was calling over it. So now I'm not saying a thing. So it's important as parents that, yes, we want to say a lot of things, we want help, but we actually have to do more of active listening, so that when you active listen, you are allowing your kid to trust you enough. Because how many of you know that the world is just gone upside down? It doesn't matter what country you're looking at, it's just upside down. And our kids have a lot to deal with. And when they go back to school, right, there's going to be more anxiety, which parents now during the summer, we need to start addressing it. More panic disorders that is going to stem up, more ADHD-like behavior, more manic disorders. And when you use this summer, right, we want them to have fun, but you want to use this summer to actually start to prepare them and say, hey, when you feel anxious, come to mommy, because we can do something about it.
It's amazing to me that, you see on social media all these things about how is your cat and how is your dog going to do when you go back to work full time, and how stressed out are they going to be? But I haven't seen very much about the fact that our children have been stuck at home and without their friends, and the anxiety and the panic and everything else that you just touched on. I think that is so imperative. And going back to the storytelling aspect, even as a teenager, allowing them to tell us their story.
That's
and
right.
What they're going through and what they're feeling and thinking about these things, and just being quiet and listening is so important. And my daughter, actually last night when we were on our bicycle ride, she talked to me about the fact that she likes hearing people's personal story online. And she said, everybody says the internet is terrible and you can't believe anything. But she said, listening to what other people are going through with their anxiety, panic disorders, depression, she said it helps her to identify things that she can do for herself to make herself feel better and to deal with these emotions. And I thought that was very interesting. And I thought, I'm going to make a point of sitting down and listening to some of these stories that she's listening to. We can do that together. She's beyond the point of me reading stories, but us listening to other people's stories and truths. I think that just carries on from being a children, that we did do lots of stories as well.
Sorry, go ahead, Dr. Stephanie.
Okay, and I think that's what you just defined what rehabilitative storytelling is about. That's what you just did now. When you watch other people, other fearless people, I call them my fearless visionaries. When you watch them tell their own story, it could be a story of trauma, and the two of you even sitting together and watching it, that's powerful enough. It's powerful. So it's time that we even segue our kids, even kids, children, teenagers, and allow them to give them the permission to listen to other people. Like you said, internet is not all that bad. It's how we use it. And you saying it, Rhonda, is using it in a very incredible manner, in a strong, firm manner, and saying, hey, let's do a little bit of rehabilitative storytelling.
Well, one of the things that children have been learning online a lot, and so that means that they're sitting in front of a screen. And one of your tips is to actually, over the summer months, limit the amount of screen time or electronics that they're using. So what we're saying is that it's very valuable to have the electronics and the screen time and to hear the stories, but perhaps setting some limits as to age-appropriate limits as to how much time kids and teenagers are sitting in front of a screen, whether it's a television, a phone, a computer.
You would not believe a lot of teenagers that I see, and they tell me they have all these racing thoughts going on. And I said, well, how many hours do you spend in front of a TV? And they tell me 8 hours. I was like, 8 hours of what? You know, they go from one news to the other. I said, no wonder your mind is racing this fast. You know, so even with our kids, even with ourselves as adults, where we get to a certain point where we know, okay, we go to bed at 9 o'clock. By 8 o'clock, you need to start unwinding, turning things off so that your mind can kind of slow down. But what we're finding out with our kids is that they hop from the front of a game that they've been on for like 8 hours, 6 hours, just going boom, 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 boom. Their head is going like in a speed of light, and they hop straight into bed and they can't sleep. So now they're rolling back and forth till the morning. So it's important that between that game time and that TV time, we have that time that we just not do completely nothing, just calm ourselves down and go to bed.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the comments I'd had years ago was that this gal was sleeping with her phone. Her phone was on all the time. Ooh. And I said, why not turn your phone off so that you can rest and relax and sleep? That's really important. You have 4 kids. You need to sleep. And she said, no, because somebody might need me at 2 o'clock in the morning. I have to have the phone. And I just, no, everyone needs time to just sleep.
Mm-hmm.
I think it also becomes addictive too, right? The more you do this, it becomes very addictive. There are some disorders right now that are social media disorders. And so it becomes very addictive when we feel, and then you start having this godlike complex because you feel the whole world needs you. Well, the whole world doesn't. And you know what? You need them as they need you, and they're not going to gain any benefit from you if you're not sleeping well and if you're not well. So if you want to help the world well, then go to bed and sleep.
And there are things that you can put on your phone. Like I know for myself, when my teenagers are out at nighttime, you can put your little favorites that their phone call will come through, but nothing else comes through. No emails, no texts, anything like that, or, only from your favorites, so that in case they're out and you want to be available to them, which I do agree with, in this day and age. But absolutely shutting down those work emails and work-related stuff. For heaven's sakes, the world is not going to end if you don't get that email till tomorrow.
So, Stephanie, do you have any guidelines for ages? Because I mean, we have toddlers that are now watching TV and watching TV programs. So do you have some guidelines as to how much screen time should a toddler have, or a preschooler, or a middle schooler, or a teenager?
Well, here's the thing. When you have ages 5, maybe 1 hour, 1 to 2 hours, depending on the other ages that are in that home. When you have toddlers, perhaps maybe 1 hour. And of course, it's got to be something educational that they can dance to, play around with, so that they're not even feeling like they're doing the work, right? So, but when you talk about adults, our lives is very busy as is. And I think for me, I don't really have hours for adults, but I say to you, think about your life and think about how busy your life is, and then decide. For myself, I try not to be more than 2 hours at a time. If you're working, for example, many of us has been virtually. So if you're working 8 hours virtually, after that work, you might want to shut it down a little bit because after the work, you want to give it a break before you go back again. So just use discretion. As an adult, just use discretion. But for our kids, 1 to 2 hours, some of them 3 hours, but put a break in between it.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things I used to say, I have three grown sons who have families of their own, but when they were kids in the neighborhood, I would say to them, however much time you choose to watch TV today is how much time you have to be outside.
Ooh,
and
that's
so
a good one.
They would choose, and it didn't matter what the weather was. And we have very cold winters here. So that used to give them some inner control over how they spent their time.
And I think with kids too, you make them feel like they came up with the decision by indirectly suggesting, just like what you just did. That's perfect, because when they come up with it, say, well, I came up with it, mommy, but you did.
Well, Dr. Stephanie Hancock, we really, really appreciate you coming on today. Now, where are you located this morning?
Arizona, United States of America, Arizona.
Arizona, my goodness, and here we are complaining about the heat wave in Ontario. Give me a break.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's been a pleasure, and we hopefully will maybe get you back again so that we can get some more tips, because I was touching on the idea of trauma with our kids, especially after this pandemic. I think you're right. We're going to have an awful lot to deal with. And if these parents and families can just talk with their kids and have that open dialogue with them, it is so important, and let them speak what they're feeling.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. Absolutely. I would love to come back about trauma, because that's the next pandemic that we're facing. And sadly, it doesn't have vaccination.
Right. Well, thank you so much. And we will see everybody next week on Grey County Life at Home. And hopefully Charlie will have some more.